The live and local component, we focused quite a lot on venue-wise, probably smaller venues, and also including some places that maybe weren't necessarily venues. There's going to be people playing, in front of hair salons and, cafe restaurants, pizza bars, places that maybe either have had a little bit of music or maybe none at all.
But broadly, I really want to know what this means. What does it mean for our music consumption that people are listening the way they are now? What does it mean for the artist? What does it mean for art? What does it mean neurologically for us? And is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Or is it just change?
Gentlemen, this is Democracy Manifest.
Cool, all right, hit me.
All right, so I wanted to talk to you. So you're a carpenter.
Correct.
Right. So I was thinking about this in the shower randomly this morning, but let's take this couch for an example. If I said, how wide is that couch? What measurement would you take?
Like you talking like a brain measurement?
If I just said to you, how wide is that couch?
But I'm not pulling out a tape measure.
Well, you can.
Oh, okay.
How would you measure it?
I feel like this is a trick question. I'd get a tape measure and I'd look over the widest point and measure to the outside of the widest point.
So from the left side to the right side?
Yes.
But then if you're ordering that online, would the width not be from the back to the front? And then that's actually the length. What's the width and what's the length is what I'm asking.
That's
because
what you're asking.
Colloquially, I feel like it's different to what the actual dimensions are measured.
Yeah, well, that's where websites need to be far more specific. But I would say, like generally, for example, a beam, a long piece of timber. Your length is your length. Your width is in the context of the couch. Length would be left to right as we're facing it.
Yeah,
width would be the other way, and then
so
there's also thickness too. So there's the three measurements
and the
there.
height. Yeah, because I was also thinking about kitchen benches, the length of a kitchen bench and the width of a kitchen bench. The length would be left to right, and the width is from the wall out to where you are. Right?
Yeah, I dare say. I mean, I'm not too familiar with measurement theory, but I would say that length refers to the longest, whatever is measured as the longest part of the item. Width would be then the lateral measurement of that length, and then thickness is of course the thickness. That's how
maybe you're right. Maybe it's not always north to south. Measurement is length, and left east to west is width. Even looking at it from a compass perspective.
It's an interesting question though.
And then I wonder if
it.
Colloquially if it is different to
more or less as you describe it. Because we're. Yeah, more or less how you would describe it. But
anyway,
you're going to have me thinking now.
Because as I'm looking at this little shelf behind us, right, if I said the width, you would think from you to me. This is poor for podcasting, but like from you to me, right? And the width and the length. Sorry. Yeah, and then the width.
I'd go length to me and width off the wall out.
But if you're looking at it, so how wide is it? You wouldn't measure this.
I think I would.
You reckon you would?
Yeah, I think I would. Yeah. Yeah.
So how wide is this bit of timber? You're not going left to right.
I don't think so, no. But that's like, so for example, all this week and last week we've been doing a subfloor. The LVL beams, they're called. You don't need to know that, but they're big, long lengths of timber, right? So when you're looking at, I'm looking at a piece of timber like this, length for me is that way because that's how I'd measure length, and width is that way.
Is it because it's a timber substance? That's why you
and it's shape. It's shape. So when you hit me with a couch, I'm like, well, that's kind of out of left field.
Yeah.
How do I measure a couch? I don't find myself measuring couches too often.
No, but maybe you're right. The longest point is the length.
Well, now I'm going to look into measurement theory.
Okay, we can do that, but that's not what I want to start the music news with, because we're actually, for the first time in music news history,
I think it is.
Potentially over the whole time we've been doing it, including radio, but certainly on the podcast in music news history, we have a guest to help us talk about one of our topics for the music news, because it's exciting. Gossy Weekender.
And it's huge as well. We need a third person to discuss this purely because of its scale.
The logistics side of it, we still haven't got our heads around properly, which is why we have you, Gerard.
Gerard is here.
And thank you for sitting through that waffle.
Well, just before we move on, I was just wondering, a couch is ever measured in girth? Because I think that could possibly solve all the problems.
What's the girth of the couch that you're sitting on?
Yeah. Imagine walking into Harvey Norman and asking that question.
I love.
I want a girthy couch.
There was like an episode of Family
This one
Guy.
I'm sitting on is quite girthy.
It's actually a really
That
comfy
is a girthy couch.
Yeah.
Because we sat on that one and you kind of like,
could
for you to utilize the backrest, I mean, do you have to lean so far away from the microphone?
You could live on this couch. It's a shame people can't see it.
Yeah. There might be a photo. Go to sonorastudios.com.au if there is one.
Or look at the video interview we did with Jack Negro over a year ago on our YouTube, and Eamon and I are sitting on that couch. If you're really curious about, and then maybe leave a comment or send us a DM on Instagram and let us know how you would measure that couch.
And then just write a comment that says, boy, that's a girthy couch. And for everyone except for us and those listening, it'll just seem like a strange comment. But
Beautiful.
Jared, welcome to Homebrewed. It's great to have you here. We're not here to talk about the girth of couches. As Cam said, we are here to talk about Gossy Weekend.
Gossy Weekender, which is also pretty girthy.
I was going to say, it's a
It
girthy
is.
lineup.
Yeah.
We're breaking records the amount of times we've said girth in a podcast.
Absolutely.
Up from 0.
It literally is, I think. I don't know if we've used the word girth ever before in this podcast. So the Gossy Weekender, this popped up 5 days ago, according to what I'm looking at online right now. I was trying to put a place on
a week ago, as you're listening.
A week as you're listening, correct. And this is a new but slightly reimagined new festival, I suppose, for the Central Coast. It is absolutely enormous. It's got one of those lineups that you see. Well, it is a multi-day festival, but you know what I mean? You're like, wow, like I need to sit down. I need to like allocate 15 minutes to comprehend what I'm looking at. And a scale such as this we probably haven't seen on the Central Coast before. So, Gerard, tell us a little bit about the festival and your involvement with it.
Yeah, it's become a bit of a mega festival. There's lots of things that have sort of. It's a bit like the Power Rangers, where they all join together and become one giant Power Ranger. Because we have the Central Coast Music and Arts that have been running a similar festival to this last year. People might know about Tubular Festival. This is kind of the next evolution of Tubular Festival, Gossy Weekender. I came into this employed as a bit of an advisor from the Central Coast Council, who received a great grant to run a program called Live and Local, which is the idea is to invigorate the live kind of grassroots live music scene around Gosford.
And is that a state government grant?
Yeah, it's from Music New South Wales, which is run by the state government. Gosford was lucky enough to get this grant to put on this program. We sort of realised that timing-wise it was going to happen around the same time as what is now Gossy Weekender. So we thought, well, you know, rather than sort of pit two festivals against each other, we sort of joined them together. Hence the mega festival that is now Gossy Weekender, running from the 1st to the 3rd of November.
Yeah, and it's almost, to use another pop culture reference, I guess, a Pokemon type evolution is this festival, the way it evolves and gets bigger and better, because it started as Central Coast Music Festival, which was a council-run event, and then it last year became Tubular with the help of Central Coast Music and Arts, and then this year, Tubular and Gossy Weekender are sort of made it this mega festival.
Yeah, that's right. And it's so cool that there's some really good funding going into the live music at the moment. And I guess Central Coast and Gosford in particular has been identified as an area that is like kind of ripe for the picking for these sort of things.
A lot of people we speak to are like Gosford should and can easily become the hub of music on the coast, because it's a little bit spread out. You know, there's Pocket Bar and other venues at Mumbo's in Terrigal. Then there's all these other venues across the coast. But if you can have Gosford become a real music and like live culture type hub, because you've got Drifters there, which is obviously, you know, the premier venue locally, which is fantastic. And you build all the other venues and places around that. It can, it's accessible with the train station and public transport. It's all the good things.
I think it's going to be great. And a lot of these venues are kind of walking distance too. I'd encourage people to jump on the website, which is simply gossyweekender.com. You can sort of see it all mapped out. There's venue links and artist links, so it's going to be really easy to kind of, geographically wise, Gosford is kind of perfect because there's so many places, like a stone's throw away from each other, so people can not necessarily stick at one venue. That the whole idea is going to be kind of mingle, drift around from spot to spot and try and see as much as possible.
And you've been part of programming a lot of the local artists, if I'm not mistaken, for this event. And just to quickly run through, we've got headliners, the Jungle Giants, the Moving Stills, local Molly Millington, local Hellcat Speed Racer, Death by Denim Ula, True Vibe Sound System, Alaskia, Ruby Archer. There's so much. I mean, forgive
Asha
me.
from Memories on it as well.
Asha, we've got Kalani Artists, we've got Joel Leggett. All of those have come through our doors in recent months as well. Tiali is in there too. There's literally so many shacked. And
there's probably heaps more that you're skimming past.
There is.
There's so many. I mean, there's
stressed.
80 plus artists in there, which is great. The live and local component, we focused quite a lot on venue-wise, probably smaller venues, and also including some places that maybe weren't necessarily venues. There's going to be people playing, in front of hair salons and, cafe restaurants, pizza bars, places that maybe either have had a little bit of music or maybe none at all. And the idea there is that we sort of get those venues excited about having live music, with the potential that after this festival's happened, that a lot of these small places can continue, and that really helps provide a really good grassroots foundation for the local music community, where people can go along and do those smaller gigs on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and also play original music too, because we've tried to program as much original music as possible, sort of shying away a bit from the classic covers guy in the pub kind of thing, which is totally cool, but I feel like we've sort of maybe had enough of that, and it's time to branch out and get the original music happening again. So we heavily focused on that, as well as a lot of young artists. You mentioned a few there, like Kalani, and another great up and coming young guy called Cassidy. There's so many. We've got a lot of different styles of music. There's some jazz specific venues, some contemporary classical music, some artists from some of the tutors from Central Coast Conservatorium of Music doing the instrumental stuff, some sort of world music, South American style music. So it's really it's almost overwhelming when you think about it.
And as I mentioned, when you saw the lineup, you're like, okay, there's a lot of names there. I actually need to sit down and read through it properly and scan across it a couple of times, because it's not like a normal lineup we see on the coast where there's a handful of names and you go, okay, cool, I've got an understanding of who's on the bill. It's like, okay, this is a lot to look into. You mentioned there's a lot of different genres, plenty of venues, and I like the idea that you are including venues that aren't, I guess, traditionally music venues, because we've done sort of acoustic cafe session vibes a couple of times, and on both occasions the patrons at the cafe were like, that was awesome, and then like the owners of the cafe were like, that was amazing. And I don't know whether they've continued to do that sort of stuff or not. I don't think they have, but the conversations we've had with them was always, that was really exciting, we'd like to look at maybe continuing to do this sort of event, maybe not every weekend, but maybe once a month or whatever the case is, because it just elevates the atmosphere in those places, and it obviously gives another place for locals to perform.
100%. And creating a bit of a groundswell. So you get one venue sort of doing it, and then the bar up the road looks at that and goes, oh, that could be cool too. And so the more, it's sort of a bit of a trickle on effect once you get a few things happening. Yeah.
Logistically, was that difficult with licensing or any of that side of thing, or you weren't involved in any of those?
Well, a lot of the bigger venues are already licensed and set up for that. Places like Drifters and obviously the Noodle House, the Fun House Factory, because the smaller groups are kind of pretty low impact. They're like often will be just one artist with maybe a battery speaker or something. So there's not a huge footprint in terms of what we're actually bringing in the venue. So yeah, the actual licensing stuff wasn't too tricky.
Okay. So I just know like some venues might want to do live music on a more regular basis, but then because of just the licensing requirements, particularly if they are a licensed venue as well, and just the amount of red tape that was around all of that, almost made it impossible and not worth their while. But so I was just curious if you're looking at venues that aren't traditionally music venues, if there was any sort of limitations or struggles with getting them on board.
Yeah, no, we haven't had any struggles at all. And there's an incredible guy who's working, sort of overseeing, I guess, parts of these programs, the live and local programs, called John Wardle. And he's done incredible work behind the scene for years, sort of relaxing a lot of those licensing laws, expanding them so that there is so much more opportunity for live music to happen in venues. Venues are getting kind of bonuses now for having live music, like extended trading hours and things like that.
So it's actually, like a benefit to the business as opposed to all this cost, and is it worthwhile?
Totally,
awesome.
And that's good. That's what we're really trying to show throughout this whole thing, that it's not just a place for an artist to perform, but it's going to give something, to the business as well, in terms of like creating something that more people want to come to. And obviously when people are there, they're going to buy more coffees or more burgers or,
Well, how many people go to Mumbo's on the regular because they do Wednesday live music?
Yeah.
Like that would have helped their business tremendously.
Yeah.
Nights at Tiki Lala's in Long Jetty as well. I've been to a gig there that was fantastic, and I didn't even know the venue, like what even it was. It's not even a venue, it's a shop in the day, but immediate visibility and a great feeling about that venue from those gigs.
Yeah, it's great. There's a lot. I feel like maybe, even probably 5 years ago, if you thought, oh, where am I going to go on a Wednesday night? You might be scratching your head, but there's lots of places you can go and see live music, on a Wednesday night on the coast now. So it's definitely changed a lot, which is awesome.
Yeah, I thought the same, even that there was at one point, although it never would have happened, this potential for there to be Tubular and Gossy Weekender on at the same time for an area that at one point was absolutely starved of live music. It would be almost laughable to think that we would have two competing massive scale festivals occurring at the same time. Not that that was ever going to occur, but just funny how things have changed, and it is a really good reflection on where the Central Coast is at.
Yeah, it's definitely swinging back around again, which is pretty exciting.
It is.
And when you consider almost a month ago, there was Long Jetty Festival.
Yeah, would have been.
As well, like within a month of each other, you could have had Long Jetty Festival and Gossy Weekender. As well, obviously that's now being pushed back to March next year, but we've already spoken about that. If you want to hear our thoughts on that was our most recent music news a few weeks ago.
I'm just rattling off some of the venues that this will be taking place at. You've got Baker Street, Bay Road Brewing, Big Little Brewing, which is a new one that Brandon Duff mentioned to us last week.
Yeah, that's great. I've played there a lot myself. It's such an awesome space. Those guys are legends there. And they're doing live music every Sunday. And then, for Gossy Weekender, I'm pretty sure they're putting on Friday and Saturday acts, which is going to be a bit of a band spot.
So good. We've also got Drifters, who you'd expect, Funhouse, Gosford Anglican Church and Gosford Wyoming Uniting Church, which is epic to have that element. I mean, churches are traditionally music venues, I suppose, but maybe not in the format that we're expecting.
Yeah, and maybe not presenting the types of music that's going to be presented. And they were some of the first guys to sort of jump on board when we put the expression of interest out to have, it's good for them because it brings in a different sector of the community to their places, which is obviously what churches kind of want to do anyway. bring in some potential new flock.
Yeah.
And there's also Gibble Park, Man Street Laneway, Railway Hotel, South End Social, Tommy's Cafe, Hair Lounge Gosford, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
So it's so cool. I'm also particularly interested in the fact that this came from Music New South Wales. This is the music news. We've spoken a lot about regulation, government bodies, government inaction, legislation, and what we're seeing with this from the outside looks like, okay, we had the change of government, they introduced Music New South Wales, we've got a similar thing at a federal level, and now you're starting to see the actual fruit of that being born. We've got Music New South Wales awarding a grant to a local government, and then we're having gigs in venues that have a lot less regulation around them. So these are the things we've been banging on for like 2 years about, hoping that it would lead to something significant. And all of a sudden we've got a 3-day long multi-venue, 80-odd act event occurring in Gosford that's fair to say wouldn't have happened had those previous steps not occurred.
Yeah, definitely. Or if it had, it would have been a real struggle. It's definitely gotten easier, and there's a lot more support coming from lots of different sectors too now, which is super good. Talking about the nighttime economy, like businesses want to get Gosford invigorated, because they want people out and about having a good time, and live music is such a massive part of that.
Yeah, well, it helps all of the businesses along there. It's not just, drifters who will benefit because they have, they've regularly been putting on gigs. It is, South End Social, the cafe there in Gosford, which is where we did our cafe sessions as part of Central Coast Music Festival 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So that was the venue we did that at. But, it's going to help all these cafes and all the other businesses in Gosford too.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's an ideal spot for live music. It's got such a great, that outdoor veranda area they've got is like almost custom made for having maybe a Sunday session, or
awesome.
A Friday after work sort of session there or something, And then across the road from that we've got the Lion's Den, which have just opened a beautiful kind of gin joint sort of room.
Is that the building next to?
Yeah, the old building there, that like the Art Deco sort of building in there. So we've programmed like a 1920s sort of swing jazz.
Cool.
I mean, they're called the Bathtub Gin Orchestra.
I saw that.
We're getting there was about 20,000 people in that band, so we've stripped it down to a 3-piece version of it, because this space is it's awesome. It looks so cool, but it's quite a small space. So
you're part of, obviously you said the live and local was sort of your focus for this festival. Were you in charge of finding a lot of the artists who we're seeing, or how did you go about that process?
Yeah, well, a little bit of that. I mean, I've been up in Central Coast for probably about 17 years now, so I do know quite a lot of local artists. And
you're a musician yourself, which would help.
So there was a little bit of like through my own sort of social networks, putting out the word that this thing was going to be coming up. But then, I didn't have to do too much heavy lifting, because as soon as we got the expression of interest out, I think we got something like, I think it was like 171 applications to perform from different artists, and I think that was we only let that run for maybe 2 weeks or something. So
far out. Yeah,
incredible response. And then it was actually really fun. Like, people were sort of looking at me strangely when I was going, I love going through all these and listening to all the music, and I really enjoyed just sort of seeing what was out there, and the variety that's just on our doorstep. There's just so much happening.
Yeah. So I know obviously the event hasn't happened yet. It's the first sort of its scale on the Central Coast. But looking ahead 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, how do you envisage this festival evolving and becoming, how do you see the festival being in 5-10 years' time?
It's hard to see that far in front, but it definitely feels to me like something that could easily be a yearly event. Like, it came together so without too much struggle. So, for the short term, it'd be great to run this every year, and maybe with, I'm pretty sure the Central Coast Music and Arts have plans to do things like, maybe not exactly the same, but events like this sort of placed throughout the year, maybe 2 or 3 times at different points through the year. It's just to keep things rolling.
Yep.
Some of them might be smaller. They might not all be quite as big as this, but yeah.
Different locations as well. They're looking at maybe doing, obviously there's Longevity Festival, but are they looking at different hub type activations throughout the year, and having Gossy Weekender being the bigger event annually?
Yeah, well, I think so. And I think that would be a good plan, yeah. It seems like a natural kind of one to have a sort of a home base kind of festival. such a great name too, Gossy Weekender.
I love the little note on the poster of, the Gossy Good Times building, the graffiti on the wall, the Gossy Weekender. It's like fonts on the side of a building. It's sort of,
I know, the
if
poster's
you're looking
cool.
at the poster, it's sort of in the bottom right-hand corner, sort of on the bottom right-hand side of it.
It's got this really cool kind of drawings of, it's got like quite a few like little iconic
little tidbits for
Gossy,
the...
like you can see the drifters, sort of the shape of the old sails, the old Iguana Joe's sails there.
Yeah, fully. I did not even notice that. I'm just looking at it now.
Elements on it.
Yeah. It's interesting that Gossy Good Times graffiti, I think, has been absolutely tattooed into the culture of the Central Coast, specifically over the last, like, it's been around for a while. It's been around for years. But when Froggy's was first earmarked for demolition, I don't think it held the same place it does now. And then the demolition never happened. Obviously, everything that happened with the Mariners happened, and that was significant. Then there were more eyeballs on it, and now it's kind of hit another part of our culture. I think it's very, very interesting. Now we should be heritage listing that building, and they can't demolish it. We've got 2 gigantic towers in there now. That's good. No, it is good. It's actually really good to see the development in Gosford. It feels like with our now new 2 gigantic, beautiful towers that are in Gosford, we have a gigantic, beautiful festival to suit them.
Well, hopefully next time this comes around, that the beautiful 2 towers. It sounds like the Lord of the Rings, isn't it? The 2 towers will be open. Yeah, because I'm pretty sure there's going to be beautiful cocktail bar up there. So it could be.
I was going to say that'd be a cool place.
It could be Gosford's newest. Maybe cocktail jazz venue with a little grand piano there or something.
Could be some very
I
cool
got to
stuff.
say, I went to, it was on a cruise, but they had like a jazz bar, and it's such a cool experience just to chill out in that room and environment, have a whiskey or a gin or whatever your, beverage of choice is, and just, watch these jazz performers just not make it up, do their performance, and it's a really cool environment to be a part of.
Yeah, definitely. I would love that to have something like that in Gosford. That'd be the next evolution. So especially if it's high up in that building too, with the view. That'd be, and preferably near the swimming pool.
We can make requests.
The ideal, yeah. Anyone from, who are they called, Ann Land or whatever?
I have no idea.
Building company.
Yeah. I actually rate them. I think they're nice looking towers. It's just the scale of them was hard to imagine before they're this big.
Man, they're very girthy.
It's a couple of girthy towers in Gosford.
People from Woy Woy are looking over at them in awe.
Yeah. It's always been the way. Gerard, while we've got you as well, it'd be remiss of us not to touch on your own project. So while you have the floor, feel free to plug yourself, the music that you make.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a little quiet. Like, I have been quite busy doing this stuff and doing lots of gigs. Not necessarily my own gigs, but yeah, I've been pretty busy this year. So the old, I did do a gig at the Funhouse maybe a month or so ago with my Originals band, which was awesome, so fun. I've got Originals gig at the Pocket Bar on the 31st, which I think is Halloween.
It would be,
yeah. Too. You have to come dressed as a pumpkin.
May get dressed up as something, yeah.
Girthy pumpkin.
Maybe I'll get dressed up as a ghost and not even have to turn up.
That would be amazing.
Yeah. How are you to cash in my check? You never turned up. No, I did. I was a ghost. That was,
yeah. Here's my invoice. But yeah, I've been recording a few things. I guess the most recent Originals project that I was part of was something we did with a group called the Space Jazz Nebula, which was like a conglomerate of probably 15 Central Coast funk and jazz musicians, and we all got together at Habitat Studios, which is over in Gosford, in the sort of industrial sort of area. Awesome new studios, and we didn't have anything pre-prepared or rehearsed. We just all sort of showed up and just played completely improvised, sort of funky 70s Miles Davis-esque kind of music, and it turned out great. So we ended up, we just released it on vinyl maybe 2 weeks ago. So that's worth checking out. It's called the Space Jazz Nebula. You can look it up. It's on all the streaming sites now. Or you can buy the vinyl. Probably from Bandcamp, I imagine. But yeah, other than that, got a lot of ideas in my brain, but yeah, haven't quite had the time this year to
It sounds like this Gossy Weekend just kept you very busy.
Yeah, it's been busy. But I sort of see the finish line for that coming up pretty soon. So
Couple of months off the Gossy Weekender and then back on it again.
Back in whatever, work out whatever's going to happen next year.
For 2025, absolutely. We'll get down to it because it's an awesome, local events happening here on the Central Coast. I mentioned a lot of free events as well. Don't imagine Jungle Giants on the Friday night. That'll definitely be ticketed. And that event was announced prior to the Gossy Weekender as well. So was that just a very nice coincidental timing, or was it always sort of planned?
There was a few things that were sort of happening already that we were obviously able to tie in, which is really good. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, get down and see as much as you can if you are around the 1st to the 3rd of November, all happening in and around Gosford. Go to their website to see all the venues and all the artists and everything else happening.
A lot of family-friendly things too, especially on the Saturday down at Kibble Park. There's going to be, sort of a carnival atmosphere down there. Cool. And it's happening, it's not all nighttime stuff. There's, daytime stuff there. So something for everyone, really, which is going to be good. I think it's a Mariners weekend too, so it's going to be...
That was literally just in my head. I was like, hopefully they've timed this as a Mariners game too, because that would just fit in beautifully. I think it was just
a lucky fluke, but it's just going to... The place is going to be... pumping, I reckon.
Epic. Okay, that sounds beautiful.
There is a Mariners double header on this Saturday. So the women play Sydney
My weekend
FC
is so sorted.
At 2:15. The Mariners men play Perth Glory at 5 p.m.
Could not get any better.
No. See, that's like Cam and me. Like
it's our heaven.
Yeah. Literally, if you wanted to like coax us into a spaceship, just say Central Coast music and Mariners, and we'd be straight in there. But Gerard, thank you so much for coming in and sharing that with us. Gerard C. Masters is your Instagram if people want to go.
Yeah, I think I changed it. I think maybe it's still that, but I think the handle is now Gerard Makes Music.
Okay, Gerard Makes Music.
It's probably easier to find. Yeah, Gerard Makes Music.
Check that out. Buy the Space Jazz Nebula vinyl. Or find on streaming platforms. Buy the vinyl if you can. That sounds really, really cool. I'm going to go do some homework on that because I'm very interested in it.
It's kind of a maroon swirly vinyl too. It looks really cool.
I do like a lot of the coloured and creative vinyl designs that are coming out now. But thank you so much for being our first ever guest on a music news segment.
It's an absolute pleasure.
So I'm glad that we got Gerard in to break that down, because when I saw the lineup, I was like, there's so many venues, so many artists. I wanted to know logistically how some of it was going to work. So it's all on the website. You can check it out yourself, but also to have Gerard in and to talk about the process of it, I think was all really cool. And on his way out, and obviously we talked about a little bit, there is the vinyls and the vinyl pressings, and that's going to form into our second topic this evening, is about how we connect to music and streaming versus vinyls and records and physical mediums. And I guess it can broaden a little bit between books and ebooks as well. It's a similar sort of argument and debate that goes on there, because I saw an article, Rick Ruben, who's a very well-known producer and engineer. If you don't know the name, you definitely know many of the artists who he has worked with and worked for. He recently came out in an interview and said that people don't have the same relationship with their favorite albums like they did in the past, or because of streaming.
Yeah. For those of us, those listening to us, imagine the music news is a big broadsheet newspaper. We've just gone from the more fact-based interview section, and now we're into more the opinion section, I think. Yes. And often the music news is just our opinions on things. That's pretty much what it is. But this in particular, Cam and I were discussing it off mic. We both have a lot of opinions on. I'm obsessed with how streaming has changed our music listening habits, and I think Ricky, I hope he doesn't mind me calling him that, is probably bang on the money in terms of, Yeah, well, in the article, he doesn't go on to, slam streaming. He understands, I guess it was all part of the process, but he certainly says that, it turned the whole industry upside down. And it, we've spoken about it so many times, but it definitely did, from the way that the labels work to the way that we access music. It certainly has changed it. But your connection, so you
told me, and I know this about you, don't have a record player. You don't have a vinyl player yourself.
No, well, there's one in my house. My housemate's in a common area, but we haven't been able to figure out how to make it work with the speak. Anyway, that's an AV hi-fi issue.
I've had a speaker debacle with our vinyl as well.
I'd like to get a nice unit. You know what I mean? But when Gerard was on the way out, then that Space Jazz Nebula, or Space Jazz Nebula. Either way, I really liked the sound of it. And I was like, that sounds like it needs to be played on vinyl, that specific type of music.
And that is the sort of experience that you have with a vinyl, going from front to back. And I remember when we spoke to Winterborn, they said that their albums are always designed with, you listen to the first song, you listen to the last song, and you go along the journey along the whole way. It's not really designed to be hearing, singles on shuffle throughout a whole different playlist or whatever the case is. Like, they design it, from top to bottom to be a double-sided album. And, I mentioned when we spoke to Chelsea Berman that I've actually been listening to a lot more albums front to back. And I've been really enjoying that process. I have now a wish list note section of actual vinyls that I would like to purchase, so I can add it to my collection, and then I can go through and listen to the experience front to back. Teenage Days Major Domo was one of the more recent ones that I've purchased. My wife bought me a King Stingray album. I've got, San Cisco and, Arctic Monkeys. Their AM album is a fantastic listen.
Classic.
But yeah, I've now got a wish list of albums that I would actually like to purchase as opposed to just listen to on Spotify, because the experience of listening to it is very different. Can be very frustrating if you hear the same part skipping and you're like, oh, there's a bit of, there's cat hair on the needle or whatever the case is, and different things that go about it. I had that a lot. I was listening to an album and it just kept skipping and repeating, and I was like, God, streaming's so much easier. But when it works, it's just...
To be fair, your cheeky cats would make streaming hard too, because they just step on the keyboard or something as well.
So we also would really like a nice display for our vinyl player, but because of the cats, they just sit on it, or they just want to be around it all the time. So it's sort of behind a cupboard that a door can close. So it's not our end game setup, but it certainly works, and for a listening experience to listen top to bottom. But I also put this down to us not being on radio anymore, because to peel back the curtain a little bit, I was primarily the one looking for music and finding the music and all of that, to downloading the music to then put onto the hard drive, to then insert that at the radio station and upload it so we could play the song. So I was constantly listening for new singles, because we couldn't ever play a full album. We probably could, but it'd be a boring show if you didn't like the artist, for variety and everything's sake of formatting the show. It was always pick a single, a new release, and play that. So I was always in listening to singles mode, but now that I can sort of step back from that, I'm enjoying the experience of listening to a full album.
Yes, yeah, and for entirely different reasons, but I'm sure the radio had some kind of influence. I know I've spoken to you about this a bit, Cam. I had my Spotify Wrapped 2 years ago. I really liked all the songs, don't get me wrong, but it came around and there was something about it that just felt like it didn't hit me in the spot. And I think what Rick Ruben's getting to, this kind of authenticity or value of music, where it was a lot of these songs that I'd been cycling through were bam, here's just this from this artist, and then there's another single from this artist. I don't really know the artist. I can't even remember the name of the song. I know I like the sound of it. I think I know what you're talking about. A lot.
If you have it on a playlist and you just put the playlist on shuffle, there could be songs in your library that just on shuffle get played more than ones that don't. So they would obviously rank higher in your Wrapped, even though you haven't chosen to listen to that song that many times, it's just come up on shuffle or whatever the case is.
I think it was like I had chosen to listen to them, but it just felt cheaper. I don't know. It was like a repeated one night stand with these songs or something rather than an actual relationship with the band. That's probably the best way I could put it.
Yeah.
And I had this kind of little crisis where I was like, what is streaming doing to my brain? Because it felt like the way that Discover Weekly works. If you're a Spotify user or the equivalent on Apple Music, where it throws you songs that you really like to, the algorithm thinks you will like, means that our serotonin release when finding a new song, we're chasing that high. And I think that's literally what's going on in your brain. So you get, 4 or 5 great new songs for the week of your Discover Weekly, and you're like, oh, this is awesome. But rather than sitting with them or maybe diving into the artist or listening to the rest of the album, the next week rolls around and you're chasing for more. And it means your relationship with the music that you have had gets worse. You don't form a relationship with the band, and that part of connection to music, which is why I have Rolling Blackouts, Coastal Fever tattooed on my arm. I wouldn't have that had I just liked one of their songs. It was because I felt a connection to the band. I listened to whole bodies of work and they soundtrack parts of my life. But if you only listen to a song for a week or two, on repeat and then move on, you're just robbing yourself of the ability to have that.
Yeah, and I agree. I have a similar thing where I would really be intensely into a single for a week, and then I start skipping it on the playlist, and then I get over it because I'm chasing the next new release. And I think, being on the radio was probably part of that, where we're looking for new and emerging Australian music, and it was constantly new releases that we were playing. But yeah, like I said, now that I've stepped away from that, I am enjoying the space a lot more. And Middle Kids, Faith Crisis Part 1 was one of those albums that was, I think was still on radio, or we had just finished. It was around that sort of transition phase, and that was the first sort of one where I was able to sit back and I listened to a lot more. I don't know if I actually went album top to bottom, but maybe I might have listened to more singles from the album as opposed to picking one or two.
I don't know. I think the ramifications of this we don't know yet, but I am obsessed with what this is doing to our brains. And then maybe for different reasons, I've done a similar thing to you, where I've been making a really conscious effort to listen to whole albums front to back and return to them and sit with them and dive deeper and deeper. And I'm still guilty of doing the single thing or Discover Weekly thing, but I'm really interested to see. And I mean, maybe we can put a little note in this when our Wrapped come round.
I can already tell you
at the end of the year, are we going to see more from the same album? Are we going to see a different grouping of songs? And that's because it's a conscious effort from you and I. But broadly, I really want to know what this means. What does it mean for our music consumption that people are listening the way they are now? What does it mean for the artist? What does it mean for art? What does it mean neurologically for us? And is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Or is it just change?
I think it's a broad thing too. It's not just music where you're constantly chasing the new hit. It's all social media now. If you're scrolling through TikTok, it's constantly, you get 30 seconds and then, okay, what's the next good video? What's the next funny video? What's the next reaction I'm going to make? It's in all facets of life. And I think now we've gotten so, it became where that was the norm. And then it sort of became an extreme with TikTok and the reaction side to that on social media, where now we are wanting to scale back, and a lot of people are wanting to reduce their screen time and they're wanting to sit with albums a lot more. And an interesting point that I think Rick Ruben made, to bring it back to the article, was he was saying that he believes music is devalued in a world where phones can carry all types of music, which is an interesting concept because, you can just pull up your phone and listen to any song. It can come up in a playlist where if I'm putting a vinyl on, I am choosing to listen to not just the artist, but the album. I want to listen to every song that they've made on this album because I'm putting it on the vinyl, I'm setting the needle, and I'm letting it go.
Yeah,
and there's almost something freeing about that. I can sit down on the couch and have a coffee and listen to an album, as opposed to putting on a playlist that I'm putting on while we're cleaning and, okay, I'm going to queue up this song and I'm going to add, skip this song. But if you're putting on an album, it's out of my control. There's something freeing about that.
Yeah. And we've also lost, we haven't lost because you're describing the process of doing it, but, few people are going to this store when their favorite album is released and buying it and being like, oh my God, I finally have this thing from this artist, and the physical nature of it, and then putting it on their record player or in their CD player, and reading the booklet and looking at the cover art and all of that kind of stuff. It's just like cheap, quick, bam, bam, bam. That's not to say the music is that, but our relationship with it, I think, has changed. It's hard. I feel like with those comments, part of me goes, oh, there's a bit of old man yelling at cloud thing going on there. But then I also agree with a lot of it too. It's because, on the other side of that coin would be to say that people's value and appreciation for music is increased tenfold because they're exposed now to so much different, and they understand art differently, and culture differently, and subcultures and subgenres and all of that kind of stuff that they wouldn't have been able to.
Is it a convenience factor? Like, is it almost the more convenient something becomes, the less valued it is?
Maybe.
I'm now thinking about movies in cinema and Netflix. It's so much more convenient to just sit at home and wait for it to come out as opposed to go out to the movie theatre. But the experience of seeing it in the theatre and getting your popcorn and your overpriced drinks and everything, compared to, sitting at home and watching it on Netflix on your couch and your PJs, is that almost a parallel because of the convenience factor to putting on a song on Spotify and hitting shuffle, as opposed to going to the store, buying the vinyl, going back, putting it on your record player, setting the needle, making sure everything's clean and there's no annoying cat hairs to make it skip. Is that do you think a fair parallel?
Yes. Well, it made me think of what I've heard about the production houses that are run by the streaming companies that apparently just say Netflix wants to produce a new movie or series. Apparently the art of directing is being taken away in the process of making those, because they're just going, bam, we need to produce a new series. So how you'd have the who's an iconic director, that has their own flavor and it's very artistic for them. It's more just no, we need a series about this. We're going to do a run of 10 episodes and then we're on to the next thing. Far more mechanical, with a lot less life in it, is what I don't know where I heard that or read it, but I heard it or read it somewhere. Great sourcing, David. But I think there's definitely parallels to be drawn there with music.
Yeah, but also that's not to say that, stop streaming, because it is... Cause then going back to that argument, you can test things, right? You can dip your toe into a series on Netflix because you're paying for the subscription. It doesn't cost any extra to see this series or, this album, this movie or whatever the case is, and then you really like it. So when the sequel comes out, okay, I'll go see that in the movies because I dip my toe in for free. Say free, you're paying the subscription, but I haven't paid for this content specifically. I've enjoyed it for free. I'll go see it in the cinema the next time. Similarly, you could listen to singles artists for again, free quotation on Spotify, really form a connection, enjoy them, and then they have an album, you'll go and buy it. Where if Spotify and streaming didn't exist, I wouldn't necessarily just go and buy a vinyl for the sake of it, or rely on radio to tell me who are the people I need to be buying music from, because that was traditionally how it was found. Yes,
and the same could be said for live music too. Going to the 100%. Shows as well. So there's a lot of sides to this coin, but it's a fascinating thing, and it really does affect all of us.
And there's more that we could go into on Spotify and quotas that we don't have now, and that's lost because of radio, sort of becoming a dying art since we left. Obviously, it's really tanked. It's all
downhill, man. Kyle and Jackie O tried in Melbourne, failed. If we had gone to Melbourne, we would have bloody lit that place up. Jesus. But it wasn't to be.
No, but there's obviously so many sides to the coin, which I don't like that analogy because there's literally two sides to a coin. But for whatever reason, the saying is there's so many sides to the coin.
Well, let me ask you this, Cam.
Yeah.
You've been playing vinyl a lot lately.
Yeah.
They're square. What's the length and what's the width?
Well, they're circles.
No, even the outside, the case cover.
Oh, right. Well, a lot of them are square.
That's right. So
that's literally what you just said.
What's the length and what's the width?
Well, I guess by your theory, which I think is accurate, the longer side becomes
But
the
it's
length.
square.
Well, then they're the same. It doesn't freaking matter.
How do we measure vinyls?
This episode of Homebrewed was produced by my good friend Eamon Snow. It was recorded at Sonora Studios in Tuggerah on Darkinjung Country. For more from us, head to www.homebrewed.au. And until next time,